Well, the inspirations for me started really in high school. My main inspiration came into my life, and that was Pat Metheny's music. Yeah, I was a drum corps fan because I grew up in a family that had a lot of drum corps background. This corps called the Argonne Rebels Drum and Bugle Corps. And I started going to shows, drum corps shows, when I was like about 12, 13, and saw this one show by a corps called the Crossmen, and they played the music of Pat Metheny. And I had never heard of Pat Metheny, but I loved their show. So I went out and bought the original music from that, which all came from Still Life Talking, Pat's album with the Pat Metheny group called Still Life Talking. And it was, had Minuano and Third Wind and Last Train Home. And it's just a beautiful, beautiful record. And that got me into jazz in general. Now, that album had singing on it. It had wordless vocal. So along with Pat's guitar lines and Lyle Mays' synth lines, you'd be hearing, one of Pat's vocalists, who was a multi-instrumentalist as well, singing wordlessly, like that kind of stuff. And that was my first exposure to vocal jazz, basically at all. So I came at it in a really weird way through Pat Metheny's supplementary sounds. But when you now look at sort of what I've gone into for the rest of my writing and recording life and performing life, it sort of makes sense, because I've stuck with that kind of contemporary sound, the abstract artistic thing. I've kind of stuck with that a bit. I also heard some Take Six while I was in high school, and I was just absolutely, literally gobsmacked. Couldn't believe it at the kinds of sounds. First thing I heard actually was the first track of So Much to Say. I hadn't heard the first album yet, but I literally heard that, gotta make this quick, gotta make this, that was the first sound I ever heard in vocal jazz ensemble music. Which, again, if you can imagine how crazy that is to be the first thing you hear. Those people watching this, I'm sure everyone knows that recording, So Much to Say. So I started with that before getting to college, and then by college I sort of expanded my listening, and my influences now came from there onward, listening to the High-Lows, listening to Singers Unlimited, listening to groups like Vox One, actually, out of Boston, which I just love their recordings and their writing. I thought it was adventurous and interesting. It used some pop influences as well with the style of their performance, but they were taking jazz tunes and reharmonizing the heck out of it. And I found myself really falling into that when I started to write vocal arrangements myself. And found that really just worked for me. That kind of sound, the modern sort of fresh approach to voicings and to harmony really just resonated with me. The New York Voices, of course, are the main influence behind my ensemble vocal writing. Darman Meter's arranging, and the rest of and Peter and Lauren and Kim, they're so hugely important to what I do in vocal jazz music. And Gene Perling, of course. None of us are doing this without Gene Perling, as you know and as everyone knows. Bobby McFerrin, of course, your first interviewee, was a major influence over my vocal technique and my interest in being an artist as a singer. And his really flexible use of his voice, making it sound all these different ways. I talk to my students all the time about how to be as flexible as possible vocally, and how to sound, how to sound a thousand different ways on even one song, So I really believe in that a lot. And then Maria Schneider's music, from a compositional perspective, has always been just extremely important to me. And of course, that came reflected in the project that my wife and I did together called Vertical Voices. Right now I publish about 150. I have another 150 that just, sit on the computer that I don't put out there for the world, either because of licensing or because I don't feel like it's an effective chart. But the ones that I publish, I'm proud of, and yeah, I believe in those. There are really three main categories of arrangements that I write, or compositions that I would write. One category would be an arrangement that I just want to write for an artistic reason. I want to be expressive and create something new, and so I'll just write. Maybe it's for my own vocal jazz ensemble, maybe it's just to record with my wife, Julia Dollison, for fun. There's another category that's the educational level chart. I would write an arrangement that would fit younger groups, more beginning starter groups, so the voice leading will be pretty easy and be pretty good. If they have a difficult-ish chord, I'll try to get them into it as smoothly as possible. And I'll offer, for sure, I'll have rhythm tracks, like backing tracks, part tracks to help them learn the music, and part minus tracks that help them practice singing their parts without, without their own part in there. So I have that category as well. But the main category of arrangements that I do are commissioned arrangements. I write roughly 20 new commissioned vocal jazz arrangements every year. And some of those then will make it into my catalog, after that, depending again on licensing and how effective I think the chart will be for most groups. With commission charts, the criteria, really, the thought process is, first of all, what are the parameters of the arrangement? I have to consider, what kind of a group it's for, whether the director would like it to be a cappella or with a rhythm section. Whether they have a student rhythm section or a professional rhythm section will determine whether or not I write out the piano parts and bass parts oftentimes. Whether or not they like a soloist featured for part of the tune or all of it, whether or not they want improvisation. So a lot of the parameters like that come from the order of the commission. It comes from the director. My job then at that point is, to whatever creative license they've given me on the arrangement, I'll sit at the piano, say, and take the melody, bare bones, and play it sort of by itself and start to harmonize it spontaneously at the piano. I am a big fan of reharmonization, sometimes subtle and sometimes dramatic. And so I'll try to check out some new harmonic concepts, maybe some modal, sort of modern modal ideas on a tonal song. Say, I've never written an arrangement of Amazing Grace myself, but that's a song that you can write in 1,000 or a million different ways because of the pentatonic, nature of the melody. That's an arrangement that I really mess with a lot, especially because you've heard it a lot. So, for example, if there's a song that is just really cool by itself already, and people don't know it that well, say Pat Metheny's Minuano, for example. With lyrics by Kurt Elling. I have an arrangement of that. And I really just set it for vocal jazz ensemble. It's not even really arranged per se. It's kind of a setting of a good arrangement. The chords are great as Pat Metheny wrote them, and I didn't really want to change them. Or I would take a chart like, I have one on, I Thought About You, for example. I took that tune and reharmonized it just to near death, essentially, and put it in 7/4 for much of the tune, and put a few different kind of weird sections of the chart in there. So again, all of these are conceptualization and the beginning stages of the process, where I'll think, how deep do I want to get into arranging? How weird do I want to be, or how mainstream or how approachable do I want to be? But it's often hanging chords off of the melody, essentially, like deciding what fits underneath the melody and what supports it, and what pushes the musical phrase forward in an interesting way. And so I'll work with that. There's a concept I have for reharmonization where you take, say I have 2 beats that I want a new chord for. I take the melody notes, say there's 3 melody notes in there, and I would play those 3 notes as a chord, essentially, like I'd play them all together, and then figure out what would happen if I had different bass notes underneath it. How would I resolve the upper structure of that harmony in a creative, interesting way that matches? And then I start to take all of the options that I have from left to right and weave them together in a way that is pleasing to my ear. And so I do that, and I do a lot of considering how difficult it's going to be for the singers, and I'll make concessions if I need to. I'll make compromises. So where you'd have someone like Jacob Collier, who, if you don't know about him, everyone, you should listen to his YouTube videos. I take someone like Jacob Collier, who's writing for himself in his basement as as a lark, as a fun thing to do, as an experiment. And he writes the most incredibly challenging, crazy stuff you've ever heard. That's 1,000 chords on pure imagination, say. Just incredible. That's not performable really by almost any, even professional vocal jazz group. Nobody's got time to learn that stuff. It's incredibly hard, but it's so fun. I wouldn't put that out as a published arrangement, and so I'll have to make some concessions for difficulty, just like anyone would. Yeah, I would tell educators that it's not really too difficult now in 2014 to deal with copyright. It does take time and it takes forethought. So, for example, well, first of all, actually, mechanical licenses, you know, if you make an album, you need to go to Harry Fox and pay all your mechanical licenses. That's pretty straightforward. And there are some, you know, songs that you'll find not offered at Harry Fox, and you have to pursue the publishers and ask them directly for the mechanical rights. And that's important for educators to do. But there are times actually when I've had to, just recently actually, over an email discussion, I had to explain to someone that as the publisher of an arrangement, I don't deal with mechanical rights. And somebody was trying to send me money for 2 arrangements that I made. And I'm like, look, I could take your money theoretically, but I have nothing to offer you. I have I have print licenses for those songs negotiated with the print license owners and the copyright owners, but I don't have anything to do with mechanicals. And so therefore, I would say that a little bit of basic education would be very, very handy to offer. And as you suggested, I think, you know, a quick clinic on this could handle it, like a 50-minute session at a conference. You know, ACDA or any of that, you know, Midwest in Chicago or, you know, the Gen Conference or something like that is probably good. And those things have been offered. I would say this, in 2014, although we've for years arrangers have been upset, rightly so, that it's been difficult to hear back from the major publishers about permission to arrange and print licenses if you want to publish your own stuff. That isn't so much the case today. They'll get back to you if you're honest and open with them and if you're forthright from the beginning. And that is the current state of things. And that's a good news. It's really good news. Hal Leonard, they're swamped with copyright requests, but they have enough people to where they'll get back to you in time. Alfred is the same way and a little faster because they're a slightly smaller, they're considerably smaller operation actually. So Alfred and Hal Leonard, you know, their imprints are most of the songs in the world, as you know. I mean, they really are most songs. You will eventually come across a song that they don't control, and that you'll have to work with, you know, you have to go deep and go into ASCAP or BMI or CSAC and find out the publisher information for a title. And you'll actually have to go to the person directly and request either a permission to arrange or a print license. Permission to arrange, though, is getting a lot easier now that Trisona Music is happening in cooperation with Hal Leonard and Alfred, I believe. And so permission to arrange is really not that hard. You can do it many songs immediately. I mean, that's an ad for them, I guess, is what I'm doing, but it's practical information for arrangers. They need to know that, for example, I just have a commission on Somewhere Over the Rainbow for Folsom High School in California, and I paid it was $200 for the permission to arrange. It's a little more than it used to be. That's, I think, Trisona they're on their business end of things, they need to make a little bit of money, of course. It used to be about $100 or so for permission to arrange. So maybe it's $150 or $200 now through Trisona, but it's pretty easy, one-stop shop. You create an account with them, you let them know what song you'd like to arrange, and it can take as much as 2 or 3 weeks to hear back, or it can be automatic. The Somewhere Over the Rainbow thing, I brought that up because it was pre-approved. I just paid for it in the same session, and all I have to do at the end, once I've written the chart, which I haven't done yet, but once I've written it, I'll upload the PDF file to Trisona. They add their copyright approved information on it, and it's for one group. It's only for that one group, by the way, with permission to arrange. But once that's done, they can perform it and, you know, as much as they want. It's their chart, and it's all good. Should I wish to sell that again, I need to get a print license. And that's an entirely different process. I can't use Tresona for that. I would have to then go to either Hal Leonard or Alfred, or sometimes both if it's a split copyright, and apply according to the way their website says to apply for it. And it's all there. It's on their frequently asked questions, or it's in the copyright and licensing portion. Alfred's is very easy, but you just apply. You put all the information in. You look up the, say, go to musicnotes.com and find the front page of the lead sheet, or the sort of official published chart. And you look at the bottom, you see it says copyright 1982, EMI Blackwood Music, all rights reserved, and all that stuff. So you copy that, or you write that into the thing, into the little web form, or into the email that you send to Hal Leonard, which is how they do it. And then they do the research. The copyright department will do some research, takes them as much as 4 weeks, sometimes less. And they'll let you know. It's either denied, sometimes it's denied. That's about a 10% rate for me, a chart being denied. But 90% of the time it'll be approved, and it depends. The deal that you work out with them as a publisher is going to be up to you and the company. So I won't necessarily get into the percentage that you pay them, but you'll prepay them for some percentage of your retail sales that you expect to have in 3 years. And so that's what I do. And I just, if I run out of licenses, I'll decide whether I want to relicense it. Or if the 3 years expires, I'll decide if I want to relicense it, if it's selling well. I think that's why you could see like sales on charts. Like towards the end of 3 years, if a chart hasn't sold well and I still have 3 licenses left, I might drop the price, down from $75 to $50 flat fee for the chart. So that people can, be more encouraged to buy it, because I need to sell it, before the license runs out. So I say all that stuff. I basically make the class just to say it's attainable. This stuff is attainable and should be. I don't know where you put it in the curriculum at the university or at the high school level or what, but maybe through clinics and the public just gradually becoming more aware, folks will be more on the up and up with licensing, because it's something that took me a while. I had to do it retroactively in order to get into decent favor with Hal Leonard and Alfred. For years, I hadn't, I had published charts without having those licenses, and I know that my respectable colleagues out there, some of them will still be doing that. They'll write as manuscript, and they think, well, I'm under the radar. People don't, the big companies probably don't know who I am. Eventually you'll want to have worked that out. You probably should work it out from the beginning. That's my advice. Work it out from the very beginning. UNC does have a class in music business. In fact, I just finished giving an interview in this very room about that topic, actually, the music business emphasis at UNC. We have a new program that's already flourishing. We have a lot of music business emphases, or people that study that, I should say, and it's going well. It's flourishing. We have an internship aspect of it. Several business classes offered through what we call the Montfort School of Business, which is a highly respected program. Our music program itself, most folks who are watching this will know that UNC's music program goes back, decades with excellence and a great history. In our small town of Greeley, it's a special kind of thing to study here. But we do offer that here, and copyright certainly is covered at decent length. Actually, I spend about a week and a half at least on that with my survey of music business class. The students are really. They're warm and supportive of each other and super talented. It's shocking the proportions of those things. Normally, there's more ego involved with people as talented as the people as we have here. Just something about being in the small town and something about the type of people that UNC attracts is really magical. And so it's been amazing so far, and we're just looking forward to building this thing further with Northern Colorado Voices, my top group, and I'm about to start an a cappella group. We'll see by the time this airs if I did this, but it'll be an a cappella vocal jazz group that I think I'll call No Capella, We'll see if that stands. And my colleague Amy Murphy, who also teaches vocal jazz here, she teaches the third ensemble. We may be adding another one eventually. And it's really just thriving and flourishing. And I'm so proud to be here teaching in this environment. I got wind of the fact that Ben Folds heard about the YouTube videos there were hundreds of YouTube videos of college a cappella groups performing his music. And, you know, they didn't license it or anything, but he didn't care about that stuff. He just thought it was cool. He just thought it was great that they were performing his music and that they liked it and that they have a lot of heart. And you know, Ben is really into that. He's really into people's, you know, emotions and with the music and how much they're putting heart into it and if they really care about the musicianship aspect of it. So he really liked this and decided to make an album featuring some of those college groups performing his songs. And that album ended up being called Ben Folds Presents College A Cappella. He had an audition process on YouTube, essentially, to get onto that album. And the group that I was directing at the time, Sacramento State Jazz Singers, we applied with my arrangement of Selfless, Cold, and Composed, one of Ben's compositions from his album, Whatever and Ever Amen. And we were accepted. We got onto the album. And there was I think, something about my participation that was, you know, in this and my group's participation that was a little bit different in that the arrangement was pretty complex, and I was a faculty member that led the group. And a lot of these groups that made the album were student-led, but for some reason, you know, maybe that I was a professor or something at the time, Ben sort of, we talked just a little bit more, maybe on average, about his project. You know, even the other groups and how he was going to record things. We talked a little bit on the phone about it and got to know each other quickly. And then later, when he started to go on he was going to go in 2009, in the fall of 2009, he was going to go on a symphonic tour performing his songs with symphony orchestras all over the U.S. And he wanted to have choir on those performances. And he thought, well, you know, I don't know if let's say, really picking out of thin air, I don't know if the Boston Pops choir, that's the default choir that they would call, I don't know if they'll know my music and if they'll understand how to sing the background parts. And I don't have arrangements for all of the songs I want to do on my concerts. So he basically said to me, I want to hire you to write some arrangements for background parts and to source locally in each of these cities choirs that you can put together to then I'll show up and rehearse them in the morning, like for an hour on the background parts. We'll rehearse with the symphony and Ben in the afternoon, and then the concert will be that night. And it's turned out to be basically a fan experience that's a lot of fun. We call them Folds choirs, and I've done about 45 of them, 45 of them as we're taping this you know, at this point. And there will be plenty more going all the way, you know, through 2015. I expect to have more of those. And it's been an amazing experience. I've learned so much about the music business, but it's been amazing to learn about this genius that is Ben Folds. He's absolutely brilliant at songwriting, of course, and performing, and he's a real professional. He takes himself seriously. He takes the people around him seriously and is very respectful. And the operation is slick and well done and top notch. And it's been an amazing life experience. And I've made a friend out of it, of somebody who's, you know, he's one of the judges on the sing-off. He's respected in our community, I think, as well, from the ensemble vocal world. And he just really knows his stuff, and I've learned a lot from him. Maria Schneider, I knew her from when I was an undergraduate at the University of Kansas. I was the pianist in our jazz ensemble for most of that time, and our director of jazz studies, Dan Gailey, was friends with Maria. He's a great composer himself and a lover of modern instrumental jazz music. And so Maria's music, of course, spoke perfectly to him, and they became friends, and then she would come out to our school, and so I met her through that. She would come direct the ensemble as a guest artist. When I then went to North Texas for grad school, to study arranging with Paris Rutherford, Maria ended up being one of our Gomez artists at UNT, University of North Texas. She was a Gomez artist, meant that she got like a grant essentially, or a chunk of money to come in and spend a week with us. The thing that happened though was when she came to UNT, there was a massive snowstorm and ice storm, and campus was closed for I think the first 4 days out of the 5 that she was to be on campus. They had her in this university apartment place, and the thing was, look, anybody who can make it out there, if you can walk, if you can slide on the ice, or whatever you can do, if you can get here, even though campus is closed, you can come talk to Maria and get an arranging lesson, or, at one point the jazz choir went out and sang for her. So we had this unique opportunity to get some sort of personal time with one of the absolute great composers of our generation and of all time. And so it was really, really wonderful to meet her again in that situation, having already met her at KU. And then the story continues. When I met my wife, my then, well, I didn't, I was just a huge fan of Julia Dollison. She was a solo jazz singer. And I met her at the IAJE conference in 2005, where she was performing in Long Beach, California. And I had my ensemble from Sacramento State on that same convention. And I required all of my students to attend Julia Dollison's performance. It's all they had to do except go to their sound check and performance. They had to do that and go see Julia Dollison with me, because I knew she was awesome. I had checked her out before. And so we watched her show, and she came and watched our show later, to return the favor, and really liked what we were doing with vocal jazz. And she came up to me and she said, "You figured it out, man. We got to talk. You got this vocal jazz stuff going. This is great." So we talked a bit and kind of immediately fell in love. And one of our main connections was that we had Maria Schneider in common. Julia was my wife. Now she became my wife 6 months after we met. Julia was the first singer to perform with Maria Schneider's orchestra. She did that as a student at Miami, and then moved to New York and sang with Maria's orchestra at the Jazz Standard on some of her usual Thanksgiving season performances that she does up there. And so she was the first vocalist to sing all the melody lines, darting around the score between, lead alto sax to trumpet to, singing her own lines, that kind of thing. Eventually, because Maria had been longtime friends with Luciana Souza, and Luciana's so amazing as a singer and has that earthy, rich quality to her voice, Maria thought that would work better for the recording than Julia's got a very specific, well, she can do anything with her voice, but her light, airy, beautiful, angelic, high-voiced sound, I love it, and I really think it works great on Maria's music. Maria chose to use Luciana Souza for those recordings, but it's still the case that Julia's performed with Maria since, and we've maintained our friendship. So we have all of those things in common. And then, if you'd like, I can talk about the Vertical Voices album. I can mention that if you'd like. So, into our marriage, in about 4 years into our marriage, Julia and I decided to try to put an artist share project together, because we had Maria as a resource to try to use that service. I mean, they're a label, but they're basically a predecessor to Kickstarter a bit. Unfortunately, I have to say it that way now since Kickstarter is so huge. We went through Artist Share to make this album which eventually was called Vertical Voices, the Music of Maria Schneider, on which the two of us in our home studio sang from the scores of Maria's big band music. Jazz orchestra is preferable because of all the doublings and everything. But so Julia would sing all the trumpets and the flugelhorns, as well as the flutes and the clarinets and the high saxophones, soprano and alto. And then I sang tenor sax, bari sax, bass clarinet, and all the trombone parts. And then we would both solo on the album. The thing that was left, of course, was the rhythm section, and so we asked Maria Schneider's actual rhythm section of Clarence Penn on drums, Jay Anderson on bass, Ben Monder on guitar, and Frank Kimbrough on piano if they would play on the album with us, and they did. We assembled a moving click track that matched the way Maria's band originally, performed the pieces with slowdowns and all this stuff. So it was this. It was really this. It was this tough thing for them to play with in the studio, and they're just geniuses, and so they were able to follow that floating click track with our voices already pre-recorded, and then we soloed on top of that and then mixed it down. We had a few choices to make about what kind of vowels we would use on the album. We did it all wordlessly. We didn't want to add lyric to it. We wanted to keep it abstract and in the spirit of Maria's music. We didn't arrange anything at all. There's no arranging. All we did was decide which vowels to sing the parts on. And we spent probably 6 months recording the vocals, and then did the rest and mixed it and produced the album. Yeah, it's tough. For you and I and the folks watching who are all fans of, I'm sure, like really deep fans of vocal harmony, vocal jazz harmony. It's a bummer that it's not more widely received. Yeah, the Grammys used to have a vocal jazz ensemble, basically, or at least an ensemble. Yeah, it was like vocal jazz ensemble Grammy Award. As Manhattan Transfer and Take Six can both tell you, but. And did Voices ever? I don't know if New York Voices ever got one of those, but it went away probably because of it was so specific. I always talk about our art form as being it's a very specific subgenre within a subgenre within a subgenre, and I'm okay with that. I'm happy to have made my life and my career living in these kinds of chords and this kind of harmony with. It's the most exciting thing for me. I don't know why exactly, other than there haven't been enough new groups going into national prominence, really. And there's probably a lot of reasons for that. Vocal jazz groups are super hard to put together, like with a rhythm section, like a New York Voices style group. There are a lot of a cappella groups out of necessity. The music is cool, and it sounds cool to be a cappella and have a low bass and some vocal percussion or whatever. That all sounds awesome, but a lot of times I think groups put that together out of logistical necessity. Because think about what it takes to put a rhythm section based vocal jazz group together, and you know this, of course, but think about what this takes. You got to rehearse on mics, and with the rhythm section there, it's more people, so the pay gets spread out a little further. The performance logistics are more intense, the sound checks are more intense, more can go wrong. And I love that. That really is my favorite thing, with a cappella vocal jazz just slightly under it, But I really love ensemble vocal jazz with rhythm section. I find it powerful. I find it, totally full of possibilities for colors and timbres and everything. And yet it's very challenging to put together once you're out of college, like in the real world. And so I think that's probably why we don't see a ton of flourishing professional groups or semi-pro groups that put albums out. And yeah, they probably would find that, like Downbeat, to have that as a category, would probably find it's going to be the same people for 20 years in the list. So I think partially what I would tell a student coming into a jazz vocal program, if they said, I want to make it, I want to do it, I would give them a lot of encouragement, and I would also give them a sense of reality as well, just as we were going along, as we were working with them. And I'd remind them of ways in which they can engage their audience and in which they can be as diverse and flexible as possible. Yeah, one of the exciting things about when I met Julia, what came with it was that she had lived in New York for 5 years. And so what came with, along with the deal with falling in love with Julia and getting married, is that she had worked with some really, really talented artists in the past, people like Ben Monder and Ted Poore and Clarence Penn and Maria, as we talked about, and just many, many other fantastic artists, Christian McBride. But Geoff Keezer was one of those. It blew my mind that I would even get to meet Jeffrey, and to get to perform with him several times with Julia in a duo setting, well, trio, I guess, with him on piano and the two of us. And then Julia has also performed separately with him and his group a bunch. And it's just incredible. He's one of the absolute geniuses of jazz piano and has been since he was a child, which is really stunning. As I know that you know that, it's really a joy to get to work with Jeffrey. His sound. How do you take an instrument that it always blows my mind when you have an instrument that really, you just push the keys down. I mean, how the heck are you going to make your own sound on that thing? And Jeffrey has really found a discernible, easily definable sound. I mean, his left hand is like two of most people's right hands. And he's got such an incredible harmonic concept and ability to reharmonize spontaneously that, yes, many of the greats have had it, of course, and I mean, all of the great jazz piano players could do that. He's one who does it in his own just distinctive way that I think is just beautiful, and he's a good dude. he's really fun to work with. He's sensitive to singers and works well with singers. He works with Denise Donatelli. In fact, Julia and I have sung some background vocals for Denise's album When Lights Are Low, that was Grammy nominated for Best Jazz Vocal Album, and we're about, spoiler alert, well, it'll be out by the time you see this. Julia is currently recording some background vocals for her next album that'll be coming out soon. And I'm just really happy to have an association with Geoff Keezer.
Great. You know,
By all means. Well, first of all, I really want to thank you for inviting me to do this. It's a huge honor. When I look at the company that I'm in, it's humbling to say the least. It's amazing. So thank you so much for asking me to do this. I mean, to do anything that Bobby McFerrin has also done, and Phil Mattson has also done, and Cheryl Bentine, and on and on and on. I mean, what a wonderful treat to get to talk to you, and I thank you so much for that. I'm grateful to everybody in my life who's supported me, and I'm thankful to my parents. I have very good parents, and they're still doing awesome. They're in Great Bend, Kansas, small town in Kansas, and I'm so lucky that I had supportive family behind me. Thankful to my wife, who completely changed everything for me, and musically and otherwise, in such a positive way, and has been such a huge change. Took me from relative mediocrity in the way my vocal jazz charts sounded and the way I sang and the way I even thought about music, to really striving for excellence on everything and going for perfection in recordings and going for heart and expression and storytelling and all of that. And I owe all of that and a lot more to Julia. And I'm hugely thankful to the schools where I've worked, Sacramento State and to here, and to all of my teachers. Paris Rutherford, who was my biggest inspiration, while in my graduate degree as an arranging teacher, and still is inspiring to me today. Taught me a lot about writing, so much about writing, and more about the business as well. To Dan Gailey at University of Kansas for encouraging me to arrange and for helping me get published by UNC Jazz Press. That was huge. And I'm really thankful to Simon Carrington, who was one of the founding members of the King Singers and was my choral director at the University of Kansas. And I got so much from him about how to rehearse vocal groups and how to get a small group sound out of even a larger group. That was one of his big fortes. And so much about the quality of sound that it takes to get the richness of harmony to truly resonate in music. I really learned a lot of that from Simon Carrington. And then a huge thanks to the vocal jazz ensemble directors all around the U.S., Canada, and the rest of the world, who have believed in me and used my music and materials for their students. I'm very lucky that many tens of thousands of copies of my charts at some point or other in the last 15 years have been in the hands of students around the world, and it's incredibly gratifying to have that opportunity to touch the community of singers in that way. So I'm really appreciative. It's just so great to hear your music performed by an ensemble in person, and they're putting heart into it and everything. It's just wonderful. I have a special thanks that I would offer to a guy named Curtis Gazer at Folsom High School. He's my best pal after many years of working together when I was in Sacramento, and he's commissioned all of the hippest stuff really that I've written over the years, and kind of his ideas about what charts I ought to write have really sort of been a tastemaker for the kinds of music that I've written. over the years, and his ensembles have won maybe I think 18 Downbeat Awards in a row at Folsom High School for top high school jazz choir. It's pretty amazing what he's done and who he is, and so I'm appreciative to him as well, and to so many others. But thank you too.